When I first started Bleach, I immediately noticed how different it was from other shows and anime that I watched at the time. What drew me to Bleach was how unique and relatable it was back then. The fact that Ichigo had to deal with being an average kid alongside doubling as a Shinigami was something that set the story apart from its rival series such as One Piece and Naruto. Honestly, the narrative was pretty similar to how Spider-Man was done, with Peter having to deal with high school life and daily life struggles while doubling as a superhero. Finding a balance between two lives is a hassle both physically and mentally. Ichigo had a normal high school life and normal friends, which in essence made him feel more real. He also had a side of him that seemed uninterested by the whole affairs of the Shinigami realm. That was until Rukia influenced him and made him start caring about the role of a Shinigami to protect random citizens. When you are writing a story about the struggles of daily life and the struggle of balancing your responsibilities, it is important to allow readers and viewers to relate to the characters in play. The Agent of Shinigami arc does all this and more, such as when Ichigo had to go deal with a hollow when he used the soul candy to give his body an artificial temporary soul. The soul turned out to be defective and it ended up creating a mess for him in his absence. Or when Ichigo had to take care of his little sister Karen before going after the hollow that was chasing after Chad and the parakeet. This arc really touched on balancing your responsibilities as well as building up the story and setting plot points in place for the upcoming Soul Society arc. Throughout the first portion of the story, Rukia gave us little snippets about the Soul Society, which served as a good portion of foreshadowing and world building, such as when she briefly mentioned to Ichigo that Shinigamis also have to attend a school to study and train, and when she mentioned that the Soul Society is generally a better place than Earth's. The Agent of Shinigami arc also deals with some deep emotional and psychological issues, like when Orihime's brother's soul couldn't move on when he saw that she was no longer praying for him every day and she was looking happy without him. When you lose a loved one, you often do think like that, honestly. You feel guilty for feeling happy without them, and you feel as though they deserve to be happy as well, which is something that Kubo tried to convey here. Orihime thought that her brother would want to be happy, so that's why she stopped praying every day and focusing on him. Also, when Yuichi, the soul that was inside the parakeet, had his parents killed by the serial killer, Yuichi tripped the serial killer and indirectly killed him, causing him to turn into a hollow. So in order to get revenge on Yuichi, the serial killer in the form of a hollow wanted to torment him by killing everyone that gets close to him. Rukia then discovered that Yuichi can't return to his human body because the hollow had already killed him by severing his soul chain. Yuichi looked to be sad, but was then cheered up when he found out that he could be reunited with his mother again. This is honestly some pretty deep shit. Because Ichigo's mother died protecting him, for years Ichigo blamed himself as being too helpless to protect her. At first glance, Ichigo may seem like a rash high school delinquent that isn't faded. However, this portion of the story does give us some deep insight into his mind and the weight he has been carrying for years. It really does add a lot of depth to his character and tells us that the main character of the series is not just a flat one-dimensional shonen character who just keeps pressing on. This section shows us that he is burdened and flawed just as we all are as humans. It makes him even more relatable and human than he was before. A good character in fiction is a flawed character. This is especially true when you are trying to connect to your audience with a relatable story. Furthermore, when Ichigo encountered Grand Fisher, the hollow that killed his mother, this marked the first time in the story where Ichigo was fighting for himself and not for the sake of others, whether it be to protect his friends, family, or a stranger. This is further emphasized when Rukia blatantly states that he is fighting for himself. After the fight with Grand Fisher, Ichigo heads back to the grave where he is greeted by his dad. And for the first time in the story, we see Ichigo expressing himself to his father and brings out words from deep within. He tells his father, Ishin, that he wants everyone to blame him for his mother's death and that he wishes that everyone would hate him. Ishin quickly comforts him by saying that it isn't his fault that she died and that the woman he loved gave her life trying to protect her child and that he is proud of her. This scene plays an important role in the story, allowing Ichigo to heal from the incident and the burden he has been carrying for 6 years now, as it gives him clarity and reassurance from his father. One of the few things I dislike about this arc, however, is the way Orihime has been handled after the incident with her brother. The build-up to her powers seemed a bit lackluster in comparison to the way Chad was handled, leaving us with the only explanation that Ichigo's Shinigami form coming into contact with her was the key to activating her powers. In Chad's case, the foreshadowing for his power was much more prominent, since he had been shown to possess the ability to sense horrors before. Ishida's inclusion in the story served as a good setup for the much later Thousand-Year Blood War arc. He represented the hatred that Quincy's bear for Shinigami after they were slaughtered over 200 years ago in order to prevent the collapse of the world. Side note, I find that the explanation for how Quincy's would cause the collapse of the world to be a little confusing. So, Quincy's supposedly completely destroy Hollows, while Shinigamis on the other hand save their souls and send them to the Soul Society instead. But how exactly would this lead to an imbalance if the Hollows are being killed or sent to the Soul Society? I get that the explanation is that there would be more souls on Earth than in the Soul Society, but how would that make Soul Society spill over the Earth? However, I didn't think that this was much of a problem, since the future Thousand-Year Blood War arc would have more than enough time to explain this phenomenon in greater detail, as the main focus of that arc is the relationship between the Shinigami and the Quincy. Ishida's actions of using Hollowgate to lure Hollows into the town was very distasteful. However, he was trying to prove the point that Quincy's were just as necessary as Shinigami, although he did come across as arrogant at first. It was very unexpected the way that Rukia suddenly left for the Soul Society without saying anything. This serves as a good plot twist and builds the suspense for the next upcoming arc. We are then introduced to Byakuya and Renji for the first time, two Shinigamis from the Soul Society that we have heard a lot about from Rukia in the past. We are now starting to see the foreshadowing of the Soul Society being executed here. When Ishida tries to protect Rukia and fails, this shows that regardless of his distaste for Shinigami, he still values people's lives and would put aside any baggage to help an acquaintance. After Ishida gets his ass kicked, Ichigo then shows up to try and protect Rukia. However, he quickly learns the difference between him and experienced Shinigamis. He puts in some good effort against Renji, but is quickly stopped by the lightning-fast Byakuya. Byakuya breaks his Zanpakuto and the source of his spiritual energy, his Hakusui and the Saketsu, and just left him on the floor to die, as he, Renji, and Rukia returns to the Soul Society. Ichigo is then found by Urahara Kizuke, who tends to his wounds and takes him in. Ichigo wakes up and realizes that he is in a strange place and is quickly told that he lost his Shinigami powers and that he must save Rukia. Urahara bluntly tells Ichigo that he is too weak to save Rukia as he currently is, and offers to train and prepare him to infiltrate the Soul Society. Ichigo goes through rigorous training while Chad and Orihime has to prove to Yudoichi that they can control their powers. Ishida ends up training by himself as he does not want anyone to witness his Quincy training. While Ichigo was training, Urahara forced him to quickly become a Shinigami, or else he would turn into a Hollow. Now this segment of the story laid the groundwork for what would later become Ichigo's Hollowification. When Ichigo was trying to climb out of the pit and his chain of fate was slowly degrading, he had an unusually high tolerance against turning into a Hollow. The Hollow mask was forming on his face, however his body was still whole. There's even a scene where Ichigo emerges from the pit with his Shinigami powers, but with the Hollow mask on. Seeing Ichigo enjoy his summer vacation after training was a nice change of pace, and once again reminds us that Ichigo still has a normal life behind all the drama with the affairs of a Shinigami. This helps to keep him relatable as the story progresses and is about to enter the next major arc in the series. We then get a scene with Orihime and Tatsuki relaxing in the Red Dragonfly field. This adds more depth to their relationship, which would make the later Arranca invasion arc much more impactful. To conclude, I personally enjoyed this arc a lot for the most part. This arc really does remind us how Bleach solidified its position as one of the big three back then. Now would be a good time to mention, but for this review, I actually both read the manga and watched the anime, so that I can see any potential differences, if any, in the narrative. Apart from some scenes being censored and the first episode playing out slightly different in the anime as compared to the first chapter of the manga, there is not any significant differences. The anime sort of extends certain scenes and adds in extra scenes for more context and build. In the first chapter of the manga, after Ichigo gets home from school, he instantly meets Rukia in his room and she then warns him about the incoming hollow that is chasing the girl. However, in the anime, there is an extra scene with the hollow chasing the girl and Ichigo sees Rukia saving the girl from the hollow before they meet in his room. And then later on in the manga, Ichigo picks up a bat to try and save his dad and his sister. However, in the anime, he grabs a metal chair instead. Like I said, these differences aren't anything major. I must say though, I found myself enjoying the manga for this arc more than the anime, simply because the manga art felt superior to the animation that Pierrot did for Bleach at this time. The Agent of Shinigami arc is definitely a solid arc that still holds up to today's standards, and is definitely an arc that I think gets often overlooked. This could be because the very next arc in the story is the famous and incredible Soul Society arc, which could be overshadowing the Agent of Shinigami arc, and taking the attention away from it. My intention with this video is to bring more awareness to Bleach's first arc and ensure that all of its brilliance does not go ignored. So, for anyone wondering whether or not Bleach is worth it, I'd say to you, what are you waiting for? Go start right now.